Builds, Ty Campbell here, and we're continuing on with our Tamiya TT-02 Subaru rally car project. I busted a lot of work out on this guy over the weekend, and I got everything stickered, I got the interior painted, and this car is like 99% ready to go. What's that other 1%? Well, I gotta take a bunch of pictures of it before we go get it dirty and use it for rally. Overall, I am really stoked with how well this turned out. This is all just factory Tamiya. This is all their included stickers, which there are a ton of, by the way. It literally took me 3 hours, maybe 4. I don't really remember. I kind of lost track of time. Every single sticker has to be cut out. Nothing is plotted. So, busted out a very fresh X-Acto razor blade and just went to town on this guy until I had the very last sticker on the outside of the body cut and placed. And man, it turned out awesome. I also got the wing all painted up, so we don't have to worry about mismatching and looking goofy out on the rally trails. The interior was also another pretty big project. I didn't go too crazy with this one. I did just enough detail to hopefully be acceptable. I'm definitely not a super skilled painter, but I think I did pretty good. And behind those tinted windows, it plays the part and it looks just fine. When it's going by at 20-30 miles an hour, no one's gonna be able to see that detail anyways. Anyways, the last video we covered getting the whole chassis ready to rally. So I covered some suspension mods, and I've actually got a steering mod and another front suspension mod I want to go over real quick before we take this guy out and hit the trails. So steering on the TT-02 is very limited, and for good reason. The stock dog bones really cannot put up with a whole lot of steering angle or suspension travel before they start popping out of the drive cups. So I immediately knew that I was going to need more steering to get this guy to turn, and there's a little piece right here that goes underneath this front propeller shaft that I just trimmed the ears off. This was hitting plastic right about here. Now it's turning pretty far, and you can see that this guy actually Ackermans out more than this guy, which is going to help immensely with cornering. Now I do have to figure out a steering stop because this can go too far and it hyperextends and gets stuck. So I'm gonna fab something up just to stop that guy in here, because I trimmed off the steering stops on the inside of both of the knuckles. I left them on the arms because once I did the knuckles, I saw that there was plenty of room. So this definitely accomplished the goal of more steering, and steering test on the carpet track upstairs, it was way better. I think it's safe to say this thing is done, other than a roll cage. I didn't have time to get the roll cage in, but kind of impatient, and the roll cage is just aesthetic. So this guy runs. I'm ready to go give it its first test run outside. I don't know about you guys. See what she's got.
Oops. Man, she's peppy.
Should probably throw some CA glue on the tires. Well, not a bad test run. Nothing fell apart, which is good. I think I've got an issue with the steering though, because the car didn't want to track straight. It kept like not centering, and then I noticed I was losing a little bit of travel, especially turning to the left. So I'm gonna go check out the steering in that car. I was kind of worried about it because it's not a very well captured system, and I was definitely highly suspect of it. So if it is what I think it is, I've got a mod that is actually really easy, and it's free because I'm using stock parts that I didn't use originally in the build. So pretty good first little test run. I think if we fix the steering, this guy will be ready to take out and hit some dirt trails with it. Yep, as I suspected, we were probably minutes from steering failure. Look at this, screw has backed out. It's gonna rip that hole out of the chassis. It's just finger tight. So these little shoulder screws are probably not the best thing to put in here, so I've got an idea. Gathered up a couple little parts that I think are gonna fix our system. I've got these little brass bushings right here that are actually for installing a servo, but I think they'll fit into those bell crank assemblies. Some longer hardware to go all the way through the chassis, and then we'll lock nut it on the bottom because there's a hole on the bottom of the car. Some washers for the heads on these guys, and then this guy I think I'm going to use to actually tie the other side of the whole system together and give it a little bit more rigidity. So now we've got this captured top and bottom, and it's lock nutted in here, so it's never going to come loose. Well, it definitely feels nice to have the steering taken care of. Hopefully that plastic in there on the bell cranks and those links will hold up to the test of time, but only rally miles will really tell us. So you guys probably noticed the springs. These are not the springs that I built these shocks with in the previous video. I did run it on our carpet track and it was just way too stiff. So I was digging around in my box of spare parts and I happened to happen across some springs that I think are working really nicely on this car, and they are these guys right here. These springs are actually off of an RC four-wheel drive King shock for a Bomber, if you can believe that. I used these on 2 of our Dakar truck builds, so I had a lot of extras, and I was digging around through my spare parts, happened to come across them, and I decided to try them because they're a lot lighter spring rate than these guys. These are stiff, you know, these are more of a touring car spring, and that's my fault. I bought touring car shocks. I did see that Yeah Racing has a version of these 60 mil big bores with a more off-road spring, so I would definitely check those out if you're interested in some shocks. I'm sure their springs are probably pretty close to what you'll need for a car like this, but so far these guys are working out really good. These are the 0.8 rates that come on the shocks. They are quite a bit longer than the stock Yeah Racing springs, but so far I'm really liking these ones. I've got more of the RC four-wheel drive springs to play around with. I've got one step softer I can go, but honestly I'm pretty happy with the way this car's working with these springs and 35 weight oil in the front and 30 weight oil in the rear. Well, it is a glorious fall day in the mountains of Idaho. Got the Subaru all ready, so time to hit some trails. So I was so excited to get this thing out on the trail, I completely forgot to show you guys the mods that I did to the underside of the car on the front and rear arms to try and eliminate some snags. So the arms on the TT-02 can be flipped top to bottom. Then you can do this to change the wheelbase, and that means that there are suspension mounts hanging down. So on the rear, I took a Dremel to those and basically chamfered off the front side so that there wasn't a big old block of plastic hanging down to snag on rocks and stuff, and then just smoothed the back one out a little bit. And on the front, I did the same thing with the leftover suspension and steering stop points. And on the knuckles, I trimmed off the excess and got rid of that big old blocky spacer that was hanging down underneath the A-arm. So it cleaned up the bottom of the car quite a bit and got rid of a bunch of potential hang-up points. I gotta say, you guys, this car ended up being a lot more fun than I thought it was going to be. There was something kind of relaxing and childlike about being out on mountain bike trails and just beating the snot out of this car. I don't know why, it was just a really good time, even when things didn't always go the way they needed to. I definitely think that the fluid-filled diffs were a huge upgrade for this car, but I do think I don't have the fluid quite right yet. So right now with that 7K, 5K front rear, you know, the car was definitely loose. Now some of that could be tires, some of it could be suspension, but I'm definitely gonna play around with the diff fluid and see if I can get this thing to hook up just a tiny bit better. The shocks, honestly, I'm pretty impressed. I think the oil is a tiny bit too stiff for rallying on trails because there's a lot of sharp rocks and just obstacles, things that I was hitting that were kind of throwing the car around. Again, I think some of that might be some tires because the tires on this car are very low profile and there's no foam or anything inside. They're just air. So I think we're definitely getting a little bit of a rough ride because of the tires. Steering wise, I did all those mods to try and get more steering out of this guy, and honestly, with as fast as that T130 is out of the box, I had to slow it down and turn my dual rate down because I was oversteering all over the place initially. I got it tuned pretty well to where I liked it, and I could actually hold a pretty decent drift. Ended up about 80% on the dual rate, so I really don't think I needed a ton more steering. I was shooting for more steering by modifying the steering stops and cutting that little piece under the drive shaft and putting the Yeah Racing CVAs in, but really, I think I don't need as much steering as I initially thought I was going to. I will say that the Yeah Racing CVAs are still a must because this car has so much more suspension travel than stock, and that added ride height definitely helped, but it was still getting hung up on some rocks and still getting kicked around by rocks that I didn't see. The RS Gen 3 13.5 Eliminator setup with the 2S power cell is about perfect power for this car, honestly. I'm just running blinky mode and I have the Tamiya high-speed pinion that's included in the kit, and honestly it is plenty fast. You get this thing on a narrow 18-inch, maybe 24-inch wide single track that's kind of a scale road. It's a lot harder to keep it on that road than you'd actually think. Overall, this has been a super fun experience. I'm so glad I finally got to put together an RC Subaru that's not a drift car, and this one definitely put some smiles on my face while we were out filming. It's pretty fun to see a car catching air and just rallying on some dirt. You know, it's different when it's a car and it's not a buggy or a truggy or a monster truck. There's just something extra special about it, and I think this whole project was a huge success. I'm not saying the TT-02 is the ideal rally car. I think there are much better rally cars out there, and I'm probably going to end up building one because I'm not going to lie, I'm kind of hooked to beating some cars up on mountain bike trails now. But still, it was fun. I really enjoyed this one, and now I've got this car to mess around with, and I hope you guys enjoyed the build too. If you've got any questions about the setup on the car, any of the parts that I used, throw them in the comments. I'll try and answer everybody. And right now, I've got to get back to work on the Element Enduro Bronco because I am months behind on that one, and I gotta get it done before the snow flies. So, I'm Ty Campbell, and I'll see you guys next time.